It's rock and roll.
Hi, welcome to today's show. I'm one of your hosts, Julian, and I'm joined by co-host Mark.
How you doing?
And the gentleman who's on the screen today with us is David Donley, musician.
Hi there.
And, for our first episode, it just made sense to kind of bring someone in who we know, who works, who has put out music, and has something very interesting, going on musically. So, David, why don't you just give everyone a quick overview about yourself before we get into talking about some of the stuff today?
Well, I guess, like you said, professional musician for the last decade and a half. Took me a while to get to the position of handing my notice in, so I could do that, And since then, I've been... I've done my own bands, but generally I've been a sort of hired hand. I'm sure you've seen those documentaries on, the guys in the shadows, as it were, behind bigger artists. But that's allowed me, mainly, I suppose, to tour around the world. But also because I'm not the main guy, and that's never been something I particularly fancied. The poor main guy is usually stuck in the hotel doing interviews while I go and have a little wander around. St. Peter's Square in Italy or something. It's it's a favourable way of doing things. But yeah, I've been very lucky to play with a lot of people that I sort of grew up listening to, and there'll probably be plenty of examples like that in this podcast, I imagine.
Yeah, that'll exactly be the case. And of course, my co-host, Mark, why don't you tell everyone a bit about yourself, because you're also a working musician and have done a lot of interesting things. So I feel a little bit outnumbered here. I piddle around on a guitar. I'm by no means anything, but you guys are the real deal. So Mark, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, so my name is Mark, and I play in the band Project Gemini. I'm sure people who have seen me on other podcasts know about that. But I do a progressive rock sort of band, and it's a one-man thing. I do it all myself. I produce it, record it, write it, sing it, play it, do everything, and even release it now, records or CDs. But before that, I was in numerous bands before as well, and toured across Canada. And then I also joined a band called Pile Driver, who some of you people might have known from the 80s. They were a pretty popular thrash metal band in the mid 80s, and he reformed the band in the 2000s, and I was asked to join on guitar. And I was with them for about 6 years. We went across Europe and the United States and Canada. It was a fantastic time, one of the best times of my life, actually. It was lots of fun, met lots of crazy people, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. And now I'm just focusing on my own music, and also working on doing some podcasts here. One of them is with Julian, of course, on the KissFAQ, and another one is the Yes Music podcast with my good friend Kevin. So, and we'll also do another one, the East West Vinyl Analysis with Ken Keenan. Yeah, and he's a quite a interesting character. He's also on the FAQ with us as well. So, lots of things happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't forget the Ken podcast as well, because Ken is, of course, the voice of reason, and hopefully he'll come on this show for one of our episodes in the future. So, David, you've got a new project about to have some good stuff happening with it. I know we did talk to you on the KissFAQ podcast. It must be a year ago now, when the single was initially released. So why don't you give us an overview before we get into our topic about what's going on, what your plans are for it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through the show.
Okay, well, one of the reasons I'm vastly unprepared for this podcast is because I've been out all day overseeing the edit of the promotional video, not a promo video, but an advert for the single. And it's the Venus Reaction single, Crashing Up. And it began as a project that, because like I said, I tend to play with these other people, but obviously I do write my own stuff, and I also think one of the things was that I've been drumming a lot. Drums seem to be the main thing, but I was definitely a guitar player, and I just wanted to do something that was led by me on guitar for once. And then I started thinking who I'd like on it. Initially, I was going to do a solo thing, and I sort of chickened out immediately at the vocal stage. And I got the very lovely Amy Conradine to do the vocals, because she's just one of my favourites. And I thought, right, okay, where do we go from here? I'm on guitar, and I got Ed Graham, who is the drummer for The Darkness, who I'm sure some of you know in Canada and America. I think they're fairly well known. Mm-hmm. And then I was drumming for Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, or Faces, or Rich Kids, or Primal Scream, or whatever band that he's been in. He just loves playing with different people, and so I thought, well, if he likes playing with a lot of different people and guesting on things, I wonder if it's worth an ask. And so I asked him, and he just said yes, I'll do that. So it's basically a super group except myself, if you like, because all three of the others are quite well-known people. But that wasn't why I did it. I think I've talked to you, Mark, off air about it and stuff. And music to me, it's about the players, and it's about what people bring to something. And I have actually been very, very cautious in sort of pushing who's on the single. When I've put the Glenn's on it or Ed's on it, I very rarely say what bands they were in, and I just let people find out. And that's been the thing with this single, is that I don't have I haven't got a manager. There's no PR company behind it, and it's just me, doing it myself in the way that I just love the 7-inch single, and that's the weirdest thing, I suppose. That's the most unique, I guess, thing about it, is the fact that I did it on a clear vinyl 7-inch single. And although it does have a download card with it, with the 2 tracks on and a demo and pictures and all that, so hey, there it is. Very nice. And but the download card that comes with it is my sort of concession to the modern world, if you like. But before the internet, as both of you know, you didn't know about something happening. You didn't hear like a clip of it. You didn't get a leak of it. It was, if you were lucky enough, you picked up a magazine that said that your favourite band was bringing a single out in maybe 3 weeks' time, and the pain of having to wait, or other times you just walk into your local record shop and you'd look at the wall, and there'd be a single by a band that you loved, and you just have to grab it, And I kind of wanted to go back to that time. So I didn't want, a big hurrah, a big sort of, check this. I basically did a bunch of videos, made a Facebook page, made a YouTube channel, and we just popped it out. And that's, when I say we, that's me and Chris Topham, who runs Plain Groovy Records in England. They're an independent record label. So it was a bit of a strange way of doing it. But what the reason why it's getting another push now is because, again, I think Mark knows this. I think maybe Julian knows this as well. But just before, about a fortnight before it was released, I had 3 horrible bereavements in a row. And by the time the record came out, I wasn't in the right frame of mind or state to go rah, rah, rah about it. Do you know what I mean? It was just you can't help it, My head was in a weird place. So it really did just leak out, sort of thing. But the record company were very good, and they supported me. And now they said, look, let's push it, again, and get it out, because it's not going to be repressed. I think I've told you this, Julian. I'd like it to be a collector's piece. There aren't many copies. There's only 500 in the world. And basically, when they're gone, it won't be repressed. It won't be anything. You can't get it on iTunes. You can't get it on Spotify, but you can get it on your computer if you buy it, because it's got a download card. But I've no interest in giving it to Spotify.
What that 0.0000083 per stream doesn't interest you? I mean, after 50 million streams, they'll give you $1.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's awful. I think I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm an older musician, or I love the real thing. I do. Obviously, I download things if it's only downloadable or whatever. But if there's a vinyl copy of something, I'll get that, and I'll probably download it as well, so I can carry it around with me in my on my travels and what have you. But yeah, if there's a vinyl copy of something, I'll have it, and so. That's where the idea for the single came. And like I say, the musicians on the single and the singer on the single, I swear they were picked purely because they were my favourite musicians. I love the way Ed plays drums in the Darkness. Glenn's always been one of my favourite bass players, mainly in the Rich Kids, to be honest.
Absolutely. And that's always going to be the one that I mentioned, because the pop and, kind of the pop pretensions that the Rich Kids had, Glenn, those lines he was running through that stuff, especially the Rich Kids track, which is what hooked me on that band in the first place, is just sick. He's a great songwriter as well as a bass player.
Right up to present day, he's done 4 solo albums, and obviously I joined his band to do the Born Running tour, which was his one solo album ago, because he's just put another one out called Good to Go. But the one before that was Born Running, and it's just, I'm not on it, so I feel like I can say, I didn't play drums on it. Javier from the Stereophonics played drums on it, so I don't feel like I'm saying, oh, check this out, I'm on it. But to do the tour was, it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It's a brilliant album.
So that will lead us very nicely into, what today's topic is, because it's about, I guess, singles or, single songs. And we're doing a top 10 today. That is our top 10, what are we going to call it, Mark? British?
Top 10 UK singles that are like influential to us.
Absolutely. So, singles have always been important. My first purchase as a music fan was a single. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I love rock and roll, and I can't remember if it was the initial release or the re-release, because that one had been out a few times as well before it hit. Like many songs, I mean, Blondie had a few issues that didn't hit, kept getting re-released until it finally stuck. So, Mark, why don't you lead us into this topic and start us off with some of yours, how you approach doing your list, and then get us some music.
All right, so. Basically, I'm a very big fan of the progressive genre, as well as rock, obviously, and metal and stuff like that. But a lot of the bands that I'm influenced by and also just love listening to in general seem to be all from the UK, or at least 80% of them at least. So this was, on one hand, simple, but on another hand, difficult to dwindle it down to 10. Now, some of these bands, when we say singles, some of these bands probably never really even had a single because they're so, odd a band that, I don't think radio would have played their stuff on radio. But I'm looking at it as like individual songs as well from their catalog that have influenced me. But a lot of them are singles. I was surprised when I looked through it for these bands. But a lot of them are on the progressive side, but a lot of them are bands that I'm sure that everybody will know for sure. They're not that out to lunch where you have to go looking through like a prog magazine and go, who the hell is this band again? So you'll know who I'm talking about for sure. And in my top 10 list, even the number 10 band is probably a band a lot of people love, and it's a band that I've always loved very much. So I'll tell you what my number 10 pick is, which is The Police. I've always loved The Police. They're a fantastic band, and I've always loved their music from the first day that I've ever heard their stuff. So I picked Message in a Bottle. That's one of my favorite songs I've heard from them. And really, as a guitar player, I always found that a kind of interesting challenge to play, because there are some pretty wide-stretching inversions there to play on guitar, and it's not as simple as it sounds to play. And especially if you played at their tempo, then your hands are going to be cramped out after a while playing that stuff. So The Police has always been a band that I've always loved, and they're highly influential to me as far as them being a three-piece as well. And me, I love my three-piece bands, especially being from Canada. Rush is my favorite band, right? So I love the three-piece way of doing things. So my first pick is The Police, Message in a Bottle.
Nice pick. David, how did you approach yours other than rapidly?
I've gone chronologically. I was going to say to Mark, have you not got the green vinyl Message in a Bottle?
No, I don't. I just have the just like the regular black 45 singles from here in Canada on the A&M label.
Right. Okay, because there's a green vinyl which I have downstairs. Maybe there'll be a gift coming to you sometime. Who knows? But yeah,
Nice.
I've gone chronological. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, please
Sure.
do.
Excellent. Okay, well, first off is the first band I really got into, and now they're a strange band because they have a sort of almost schizophrenic quality in that they were very much a bubblegum band when they first came out. But to me, they were in that era where they were pushed to be pop performers and what have you, but their B-sides were like Deep Purple or something, and their album tracks were amazing. And so my first pick is Turn It Down by Sweet.
Oh, nice.
And Turn It Down is an absolute killer of a track. It came out in 1974 and it was banned by the BBC. Now, this is so British. They were banned by the BBC, this record, because of the phrase "for God's sake." So yeah, it didn't even have it didn't have any cursing in it. It was just for God's sake. It was just too hot for the radio. So it wasn't a big hit, but I really didn't like. I wasn't really into Blockbuster and stuff like that. That wasn't my bag at all. It was. I think I was basically bought a Sweet album by my sisters for a birthday, and the album tracks, like I say, they were like Deep Purple, or they're really heavy. And so the actual singles were not my favourites, but this one, Turn It Down, it's got a classic riff. It's got a really heavy riff. It's fantastic. I love it. So yeah, the Sweet were they're an amazing band. And as a little drummer, I was a drummer since the age of 5, and I mean, Mick Tucker was just. He was right up there as someone who just made me want to be a drummer, and I went to his funeral, in fact, to quite literally to pay my respects, because I really wanted to. He'd basically been a big part of me being in music in the first place. So yeah, Sweet, Turn It Down. If you haven't heard Sweet, Turn It Down, and all you can think of is Ballroom Blitz and Wig Wham Bam or whatever stuff, just put it into YouTube. Sweet, Turn It Down. They did a brilliant version of this on Musikladen, which is that German live TV show. So there's a live rocking version on YouTube. So check it out if you wish.
Yeah, there's a reason why the Sweet is an inspiration for so many musicians that came later, and it's more than just a couple of songs. So, all right, my first one will be right up your alley. It's the first band I actually started collecting. Before all that Kiss stuff came along, I was collecting Sex Pistols singles.
Hey!
Because when I started getting into music more, I, just loved the Pistols. And when I'd visit England, in particular, I'd go to all the record stores, and then I started seeing the covers, and it's got the single has the worst cover possible out of the majority of the Pistol singles. Not that any of them are high art, other than maybe God Save the Queen. But Pretty Vacant. Number one, it's my all-time favorite Pistol song. Look at that. Singles in the 70s often did not get great covers in the UK, but it does. Well, yeah, I guess Kiss later took on the Broken Glass thing, but
and the Venus Reaction.
Pretty Vacant, great pop punk song that really it's just perfection, crafted. It's one I can play on guitar, and I just love the riff. I love the chords. I love everything about the song, its structure, and the attitude, because it really was kind of what the band was about before it became a farce. So,
and also, it's actually one of the very few songs that was entirely written by Glenn.
Odd that, eh?
Yeah. It's lyrics and music. I believe John altered a line. I believe that's all it is. I think there was one line, possibly the "Stop You Cheap Comments" line. I think, but I can't remember now. But I do know that was one that Glenn brought to them pretty much whole, and yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? It's an absolute classic.
And John's delivery of it is a cracker. So I mean, it's just
Yeah.
Think how young they were and what an amazing sound they made. And obviously, when I've played with Glenn, we always play Pretty Vacant because it is kind of his song, and it's just one of those moments where, I'm very sensible when it comes to music. I've played with a lot of famous people and what have you, and I try not to be, well, I'm not starstruck really. They're just really cool at what they do, and I just pleased to be there. But every now and again, we'd be playing somewhere, like I remember at the Rebellion Festival, which is, I think, about 3,500 people in this big ballroom somewhere. And I just remember being halfway through Pretty Vacant and realising that the guy that wrote it was about 3 feet away from me, and it was really good. And I'll just quickly, sorry if I keep doing this, you'll have to tell me not to, but I do know the story behind the sleeve as well.
Really? Yeah, well, do tell them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since I just slagged it off, we might as well.
Well, they have a guy called Jamie Reed who did their artwork, and he was asked by Virgin to get a sleeve done for this, and he hadn't come up with anything, and he was walking to the Virgin Record offices, supposedly to hand the artwork in, and he hadn't done anything, and apparently he was walking down Portobello Road, and he saw this picture frame in a shop window, and it was broken, and he just bought it for a few pence, and then just cut out the Pretty Vacant and Pistols logos and put them in there, and then said, "There you go, that's the sleeve."
Nice.
I think it's great, though. I think it's great. I think it sums up, because there's nothing in it. It's Pretty Vacant, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there you go. Good story that goes along with it. So, great song. Look that one up on YouTube if you've never heard it, and if you haven't, shame on you. Mark, let's go on to a couple more of your picks.
Okay, so yeah, I got to say though, that's a great song. I've always loved Pretty Vacant as well, and I think Submission is another song that I love from them, and A Holiday in the Sun is another one that I've always enjoyed as well. So I'm a big fan of that stuff. I mean, I'm not as deep into it as you guys are. I know more of the more mainstream, I guess you would say, songs, but still, great band. Speaking of great bands, my number 9 one is a band that I'm sure everybody knows. And when I say the band, I know people are probably jumped to a certain era from this band and say, okay, well, it's going to be from this album or something like that. But really, the era I'm going to pick from is one that has a lot of controversy with their fan base, because either people love this era or they hate it completely. And that's Pink Floyd. And I love the song Learning to Fly. And now what that song did for me was, I was just a very, casual Pink Floyd fan before I heard that song. When I heard that song, it really struck me. I thought it was a fantastic song, and I loved the video to it. And that song made me go back and buy everything on album that they did, and realize just how much stuff I was actually missing. Because at that point, I had only had maybe Dark Side of the Moon and I think The Wall. And then when this single came out, I bought that record, and then I went back and got everything because I just loved it. And the ironic bit about this will be that anybody who's followed me on the KissFAQ podcast will know that there's a certain Bob Ezrin who is involved with this record very heavily. And people know how much I despise his work on a certain Kiss record called Destroyer, right? But like I said in my prior episodes with you guys, I don't despise his work overall. It's just that record. like this album, the Momentarily Lapse, the reason I absolutely love this record, and I think he did a fantastic job, just like I think he did with Alice Cooper's stuff and numerous other bands, right? So this again is a great example of a time period in the band that was much later than its supposed heyday, and because of this single, it really inspired me to go back and listen to everything else they did prior.
Yeah. Well, I guess it might be a generational thing because I adore that album. If I'm in, have any like depression, just put on that album and brings me up. And I nearly had a song from that on mine, and it would have been One Slip. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, love the production and just the ambiance. But yeah, it's not really real Pink Floyd for me, but I was in a similar boat. I only had Relics in the wall, and when that came out, and that made me go back and Wish You Were Here, Metal, Metal.
Yeah.
Animals.
They weren't really a singles band, were they? I mean, not at all.
Not at all. And look at how tough it was for them to do a single for The Wall. It was a hatchet job.
Yeah.
Well, I know, like I say, tell me to shut up if it's too much. But as a guest, I'm probably going to interject with various stories on here. But I did have a very surreal moment. Again, it was a Mr. Matlock moment, and it was at a place called Vowood Festival, which is a festival in the UK, and we played it. And I remember we were halfway through Pretty Vacant. I remember that was the one. And I could see this guy standing. I need glasses to drive, and so my eyesight, I'm quite short-sighted. But I could see this guy singing along with it, and really, really enjoying himself. But down the side of the festival, sort of thing, not actually in the main crowd, but this guy. And I thought he looked familiar, but I thought, no. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. And so after the festival was done, because I think we were headlining, I think, and it was in the grounds of this stately home. We went back to this stately home afterwards, and I was in the kitchen of this place, lovely rustic old kitchen, and I was making a cup of tea. Glenn came in, and we sat down at a kitchen table, and then this guy came in, and I recognised him straight away as the guy that had been singing along to Pretty Vacant, and it was Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And
Dave Gilmour singing along to Pretty Vacant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, apparently his wife's a big fan. She's really into the Pistols, and but what really got me was that I said to him, I said, hey, you were singing along there to Pretty Vacant, and he said, yeah. He said, and Glenn made a joke and said, you should have got up and played it with us. And Dave Gilmour immediately said, well, you should have asked me. Can you imagine the YouTube clip that would have been? Can you imagine what that would have been like to have played Pretty Vacant with the guy that wrote it and Dave Gilmour?
Yeah.
Yeah, David Gilmour.
That would have been quite a moment.
One of the best guitarists in history, so.
Yeah. And do you know who Howard Marks is over there?
Oh God, that sounds familiar.
He's the guy that was known as Mr. Nice, the biggest hash dealer in the 60s and 70s. Very famous for just being one of the most wanted men. But he's a real character. He passed away a few years ago, but he was at this Vowood Festival as well because he'd released a book, an autobiography. And I heard him afterwards as well. He was telling Dave Gilmour how he had a deal with their roadies, and he used to smuggle so much of his stuff in their amps. In Pink
Nice.
Floyd's, there used to be some of the amps were empty, and he used to pack them full of hash. And Dave Gilmour knew nothing about this, I hasten to add.
All right, well, let's get another one of your single picks, David.
Okie dokie. Well, this is there's another, because I didn't know you were going to do Pretty Vacant. So basically, my next one is Ghosts of Princes in Towers by the Rich Kids. And
brilliant.
Again, like I say, I can separate friendship from musical heroes, from records, from all that sort of stuff. And so I'm not saying it because, Glenn used to be my boss or anything. But I just think Ghosts of Princes in Towers is one of the lost number one singles, if you ask me. I just think it's got everything. I think the lyrics are great. The playing's great. Steve New was an amazing guitarist. I love Rusty Egan's drumming, Glenn's bass, obviously, and Midger, who went on to be in Ultravox and do all his other stuff, was on vocals and second guitar. It's just got it all. It's just a really uplifting, amazing single, and it should have been a massive. I mean, it did chart, but and I loved it back in the day. This isn't something I discovered through my professional work or anything, and I can prove that by showing this homemade picture sleeve, because it wasn't in a picture sleeve, but I made one. I think I cut the lyrics out of a magazine called Smash Hits that used to have the lyrics in and stuff like that. But yeah, so I have 2 copies of it. But yeah, I just think it's one of those things. Again, it's one of these things where I mean, all of us are basically probably throwing things at each other, saying, "Well, if you haven't heard it, go and check it out." And I would say that forget the Pistols, forget all the stuff behind it and what have you, but check out the Rich Kids Ghosts of Princes in Towers, because I just think it's one of those lost singles that we've all got them, I'm sure, where we thought that should have been a hit,
Yeah, I mean, that whole album, I mean, is kind of a lost album. And you look at the projects that came after the Pistols, people get hung up on the Pistols because of the fury, and the hype and all that. But there was good music behind it, and there was good music after it. When you think about what Glenn did with the Rich Kids, what Steve and Paul did with the Professionals, which was also another lost project, and also what John did with Pill. I mean, it is often overlooked in the United States because it was not kind of what was expected to be coming out of someone who had fronted the Pistols. So all that music and all, Steve and Paul did a lot of very, very bloody good music, as well as Glenn. So, did you ever try and get Glenn to play that, or did you get to play it live with him? Anything? Did you ever get to play any Rich Kid stuff live with Glenn?
Yeah, we did. We did Burning Sounds and Ghosts of Princes and Towers.
Nice.
So it's, and again, an absolute thrill, an absolute thrill to play those sort of songs. I'd have done it. To be honest, I'd have done. And also, let's not forget that the Rich Kids did reform a couple of times. The first time was to help Steve New, who was very ill at the time, and did subsequently pass away. But they did reunite and do some shows, and I obviously offered to help, and I was the sort of drum roadie, guitar roadie, bass tech, whatever you want to call it. I was just kind of on hand throughout that thing. So again, that was a real thrill to be involved in that. And then when they reformed again to do another one, they had Gary Kemp on guitar from Spandau Ballet. Yeah. Because he's a big fan. He was a big Rich Kids fan, and that was brilliant as well, because I also got to be the drum tech for Paul Cook, because the Professionals were supporting, and he couldn't get his drum tech for that night, so that was another fun thing.
Teching for Cookie, brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was literally the only place I could be on the stage was crouched behind the bass amp, so that the audience didn't see me, but it meant that I was literally 3 feet away from Paul Cook, and it was great just watching this guy that had been quite an inspiration when I was a young lad, and they're nice people as well, good people, they're good guys.
All right, I'm going to get in with a pick, and this is a band that, as I went backwards through their catalog, I found that I liked their older stuff more, but this single is not one of the older stuff. It's actually something after they'd kind of gone off the burner a little bit, so it's The Cult. Got into them in '87, when they really started hitting in the States where I was living at the time. So obviously Electric is a fantastic album, but I found I preferred Love and Dreamtime even more, and then going back to Death Cult and Southern Death Cult stuff, just absolutely brilliant stuff. But for a single, one of my all-time favorite songs is The Witch, which came out after Ceremony. And Ceremony was an album that really saw them kind of stagnate. Wasn't successful. I think it had Wild Hearted Son on it and whole other, after Sonic Temple, it was kind of, down from there for a bit. But The Witch is just a wicked song with a wicked kind of, this is what positive punk they were called in the early days, post-punk for the Southern Death Cult. Just a fantastic band, and Ian's voice to this day is one of those, to me, iconic rock voices that I can hear down the road. I know someone's playing The Cult and my ears perk up, because it's a band that continues to work, continues to put out music, continue to do what they want, how they want, and I've got nothing but the greatest respect. But that is one track. If you've not heard it, go and check it out, because I think it was on a soundtrack originally, but it's been on many of their greatest hits packages.
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I've seen them a bit. Have you seen them?
I missed them when they were out here in San Francisco recently, and the last time before that. I just don't get the opportunity. But I did buy the CDs from that show when they were selling them. And they're still really good. And I'm again, it's just one of these things where almost everything we talk about, I'm probably going to have some sort of weird connection with. But obviously, James Stevenson, who was the guitarist in the Philistines with Glenn and myself, he's the second live. He's sort of the extra guitarist live for the Cult. He's done several tours. Not every single tour, but a lot of them. And so I was very lucky enough that James sorted me out some tickets when they played, when he was doing the last tour with them. And they were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. They're really, really good. And so I just think they're just one of those brilliant bands. They're still rocking, still sounding good. Yep. All right, Mark.
Go on.
Move on.
Oh, okay. So so I'll go on to my next one then. But I was going to say The Cult is another one of those bands that I really dug in when I was in high school. I was a big fan of them, especially Sonic Temple was one of my more favorite records when that came out. And again, that was one of those situations where I had Electric before and thought it was pretty cool. It's like a British version of like AC/DC, which I guess is technically the same thing. They are British anyways, but Australian British, But the thing is, I thought that Bob Rock kind of took them to a different level sonically with their sound. I think it was a much more smoothened out sound, but it had such power to it. So I really loved that record. But speaking of great voices, my 8th pick is from a band that we're lucky to have 2 iconic singers throughout their, well, more than 2, but 2 that people really talk about as far as great singers go. And again, this is another situation where I got into them after their first singer was gone and ended up going back into them more later on and discovering all their back catalog. And that's Black Sabbath. And I got into them when Dio was with them, and my favorite song that got me into them was Heaven and Hell. Like, that song right there was, to me, one of the staple, metal songs that, everybody and their brother knew, especially around here where I lived in Canada. The people were hot on Black Sabbath, especially with Dio. And then, it took, I guess one of my friends down the street had some of the older Sabbath stuff, like Sabotage and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and he goes, "Yeah, did you ever hear any of this stuff?" And I was like, "Nah, no." And I knew of like Paranoid and stuff like that, but I wasn't too familiar with their older stuff. So once I got into the Dio stuff, I went backwards into that stuff and found that I liked that too. And in fact, one of my favorite Sabbath albums is the debut record. I've always thought that that's one of the best albums that it was ever done. And the fact that it was done in like 16 hours or whatever it was on a straight 4-track machine is like just unbelievable, to think that this is a record that was done in that way. It still boggles the mind to this day that you have people like me and other people who are using like, upwards to like 30 and, 45 tracks to record a song. And these guys made a fantastic, barn burner of a record with 4 tracks. It makes you feel like a fool that he takes that many tracks for me to do a song that sounds anywhere near as good as their stuff. So Black Sabbath has always been a big influence on me, and especially the Dio era. And it's too bad that he left us so soon, because when he came back the last time and they did Heaven and Hell, the group, I had a chance to see them a couple of times live, and he was just like unbelievable live, this guy. So he's sorely missed, in my opinion, and again, he'll always be influential to me.
Brilliant. I mean, I had Sabbath pick in mind as well, Symptom of the Universe, which it's just, again, many of the songs that have been on my list are ones that I pick up the guitar and play along to, and it's usually a riff or maybe a little noodly section that I'm trying to learn because it just resonates with me. But my first Sabbath album was Masters of Reality, so Sweet Leaf and all that, and then we got to experience more. David, let's move on to your next pick.
Okie dokie. Well, okay, it's the same single, but I have 4 copies, and it's Generation X King Rocker. And what I loved about this is that they released it in 4 different sleeves and 4 different coloured vinyls, and I have them all. And so yeah, you've got the Billy Idol sleeve, and then Tony James, Mark Laff, and then a very nice orange Bob Durwood Andrews. And King Rocker, I just, it's one of those singles that as soon as I heard it, I just thought it's fantastic. I mean, it's brilliantly produced by Ian Hunter. Ian Hunter, obviously, fantastic artist in his own right. Yeah, no, I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah, Tracy Hunter, Ian Hunter's daughter, was one of the backing vocalists with Glenn when we were touring and stuff as well. So there's a connection there. But that's not why I've chosen it. But no, I remember seeing it on, when Generation X came out, I just thought they had that brilliant mix of just really catchy tunes and a bit of a strut, and they had something about them. But King Rocker, I just love the idea that lyrically, it's about sort of John Lennon and Elvis having a fight and all that sort of stuff, or basically, those sort of rockers, belting it out. Brilliant guitar playing, fantastic sound on the drums, and it's just one of those things. I wouldn't say they're a favourite band of mine. I mean, I've got a best of album, I've got the first album, I've got Kiss Me Deadly album, I've got sort of I'll cherry pick from that sort of thing. But King Rocker as a single, I think, is an absolute masterpiece. So I had to just pop that in there. And yes, I have got all 4 colours.
I'll have to check that one out again. I haven't had much experience with Gen X.
Yeah. I just think they're brilliant, and I love that. Again, it goes back to that's why I did my single on clear vinyl and what have you, is because it's the collecting thing of just. I remember trying to get all 4 colours, and it was great. It was the moment. It was also the moment, not back then, but later on in life, that I realised that a girlfriend wasn't the right woman for me, because she was looking through things. And I was playing some records at home, and I pulled out all 4 of them, and I was like deciding which one to play. And she said, "Is that the same song?" And I went, "Yeah." And she said, "It's just on different colours." And I went, "Yeah." She says, "Well, what are you trying to decide?" So I don't know what one to play. I might play the red one. And she gave me a look. She looked at me. She looked at me like a dog that had been shown a card trick. She just couldn't get her head around it at all. And I thought, this probably isn't going to last.
All right, I'm gonna. My next pick was a single. It was a lead-off single off a 1981 album. One of the guitarists on it ended up being my sister's landlord in Sheffield. Used to come around and fix clogged sinks. And this band is being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. Def Leppard, Let It Go, from the mighty High and Dry album, which is an album, again, I just talked about strapping on a guitar. I will put a guitar on and play every song other than Bringing on the Heartbreak from that album. Just loved the guitar work. I mean, Pete Willis and Steve Clark were just a pair, perfectly married in a band, a youthful band. And I know Britain kind of rejected them after On Through the Night came out, and in the UK at least, High and Dry was just completely ignored. Managed to go gold in North America because they had a lot of kind of support. They did extremely well in the US, touring with Blackfoot and all sorts of bands, Ozzy in 81. So to this day, the whole album, but it's the lead-off track. It sets the tones. Unfortunately, Pete only plays the guitar parts at the end, but it's just fun guitar rock music. Great stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. I definitely. I mean, like I say, you know, we've when we met Julian in the good old UK, we were sort of talking about Def Leppard, you know, and you know, obviously they're a big one for all of us in the UK. I think, you know, they ticked all the right boxes, and it was really good that, you know, everyone. It's a shame they had to go through the whole tragedy of it all, but they basically have just kept on going throughout. And you know, a lot of what happened to them would have just, you know, nailed any other band. But you know, they just kept coming back, and it was really, really good. I like Hysteria. I mean, I do. I know it's a bit poppy and a bit sort of mainstream, but it's a peach of an album, I think. But yeah, the early stuff's fantastic. You know?
Yeah, it may be poppy, but play something like Gods of War, and I mean, there's very few bands that really approach kind of the level of creativity that bands such as Queen did in the 70s, just all these layers of sounds. And I mean, if you listen to interviews with Phil, you know, talking about the guitar work, I mean, we can't play it live. We have to play kind of a composite of all these different guitar tracks, because there's too much guitars in it. So, you know, it doesn't matter to me which Def Leppard album. I'm sure there's some that are a little bit too poppy, but give me Euphoria, give me High and Dry, you know, first album, Pyromania.
It's interesting because when you mentioned that whole thing about them not being able to play live, when I first was into guitar playing, the Hysteria guitar book was one of the first ones I got given to me as a gift. And I remember looking through the tablature of it, and there were numerous songs where it was like guitar 1, guitar 3, guitar 6, guitar 7. Like, what the hell? Like, there were so many guitar sections for songs but that really opened my eyes to realizing how much guitar layering happens in some of these songs to make it sound the way it is. And that's one of the things that sparked my mind into production and getting into that. I was like, wow, like, you know, I didn't realize that just playing an open E string through a whole chorus could add so much to a song. I mean, it looks ridiculous just doing it, just going like you just think that you're an idiot doing it. But when you add that to all the other things in there, it adds so much to it. It's unbelievable. So, and before I go to my next pick, Def Leppard is one of the bands that I haven't been collecting vinyl of at all. I've been collecting cassettes of. So I have my cassette copy of On Through the Night, High and Dry, Pyromania, Hysteria. Now I'm just trying to see if I can find cassette copies of some of the later records, but for some reason, the cassette and Def Leppard connect with me for some reason, because that was what I used to always listen to in my car back in the day when I was listening to Def Leppard. So I have a kind of a connection with cassette for that. But let's get on to my next pick. And this is a band that I got into a little bit later, considering how long this band has been out in the progressive scene. And this band I have to single-handedly give my tip of the hat to for getting me back interested in writing songs again. This band, their songs were so crazy when I started listening to them, and the way they did their vocals on some of their records were unbelievable. The song I'm going to actually reference as a single, or one of the songs that I really enjoy from them, is far better live, and the rearrangement that they've done of it live is so much better than the studio version. I always go to YouTube and at least watch it once or twice a week, and that is the band Gentle Giant, and they have a song called On Reflection, and that's from the album Freehand. And on the album, it's, you know, very musical and stuff like that, and the vocals come in about halfway through. But on the live version of this, they started off with this really crazy 5-part vocal harmony where they're countering each other, and the drummer runs out and plays xylophone bits in between the vocals, and then the guy's playing trumpet with one hand and the bass on the other hand. It's absolutely insane watching them play this song. And that, when I was in the hospital, was my leg broken, and I saw that on YouTube in my bed. I was like, it really made me sit up and just get excited to go to my physiotherapy to get back up and rolling again, because I just inspired me musically to see these guys do it. So that's a really important pick for me. So if you haven't seen Gentle Giant doing On Reflection live, there's a great video of them doing it somewhere in England for the BBC television show on that channel. I forget what the show was called, but they were doing some live video television program it's on there. You just put their Gentle Giant on Reflection, and you watch that version of it. It'll blow your mind. I swear.
Well, I'm really happy that you brought that one up because, one thing I love about the podcast that both of you do is that I always discover something. And even if it's an artist I know about, it'll be like Ken Keenan. I can't believe Ken Keenan actually made me check out a Billy Joel track because on one of your things, because he was like, and I mean, that's, yeah. And I didn't go and buy the album or anything, but it was fascinating. He was right. It was a good track. But I'd never thought it. And I have to say, I've never heard anything by Gentle Giant. I'm sorry, I just haven't. I haven't, but I will.
Really?
Yeah, I'll check that out. But I don't know Gentle Giant at all. Not at all. I know that I can picture one of their album sleeves because it's got a great big giant bloke on the front. Is the face. But no, beyond that sleeve, I don't know him at all. Julian, do you know?
Nothing. I had some Gentle Giant CDs that came in a stack and never heard of them, so I just took them to the local place to sell them on. Never checked them out. All right, David, let's do another pick, one of your picks. We're not going to get to 10 today, so we'll just go for a couple more rounds, and then we'll get back to talking about your single.
Okie dokie. Righto. Well, I'll be quick then. In that case, this band is going in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year as well. So, and it is The Cure, and this is a track called "The Forest." And that was the only track I'd heard before going to see them live. And that was back in 1980, and then I went and saw them in 1981. And they weren't a big band, and I ended up meeting the drummer at the time, who's Lowell Tolhurst, and me and Lowell are still friends 35 years later. We sort of became, I became pen pal. I was only like 14 years old or something, but I was really all excitable, and I said, "Oh, I'm a drummer too," and I'm amazed he didn't tell me to just go off. But he was really nice, and we sort of became friends, and I ended up sort of hanging around with The Cure in around about sort of 1984, 85. There's some pictures of that time on Facebook, and brought sharply into focus quite recently with the death of Andy Anderson, the drummer, who was the drummer at the time that I was kind of hanging out with them, because Lowell was still there, but he was on keyboards by that point. But dear old Andy, rest in peace, a lovely guy. And but The Cure are amazing, and it was weird to see them when they weren't a big band, and then watch how they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they blew up in the States, and now I'm still sort of scratching my head. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. It's amazing. And as soon as I heard, I sent Lowell a message. And he got back to me, and I think his head's spinning a little bit, but there you go. So we've both picked Rock and Roll Hall of Famers.
And I'm going to have to check that one out because, mid 80s when I was into, getting into music in the U.S., I missed The Cure completely. And then by the time I was in high school, the people who were listening to The Cure were basically the goths, and they were kind of forbidden from the burners. All the cliques. So, I avoided the music. I know Kiss or whatever it was, Kiss, hit big in 87. Yeah.
Kiss. Yeah.
And that's about all I know. I know, obviously, Robert Smith and I know what he looks like. And that's my sum total knowledge on The Cure.
Well, in the same way as we were talking about Def Leppard, I'd say the Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me album is there sort of a bit more poppy and a bit more sort of light, and the same with the Wish and with Wish, the album. But that had a lot of big hits on it. But the first album sounds like nothing they ever did ever since. It's very sort of very lo-fi production and what have you. But then the three albums after that, 17 Seconds, Faith, and Pornography, they get darker and darker and darker. And I think the Pornography album is the one that the Cure fans that are sort of dyed in the wool Cure fans, everyone holds that one up as the album. If you want their non-commercial, really dark, but probably a lot of Cure fans' favourite one. And it's the production on it's great. Lyrically, it's great, and there's some weird sounds on it and stuff. But it's not an album that had any massive hits on it. They took a couple of singles off it, but it really wasn't until they sort of started exploring the sort of the more pop commercial side of things, and then they had that as well. So, you know, all rounders.
Well, I'll check out that single that you've shared. All right, so my next pick, and I guess Mark's kind of already alluded to Sabbath, and this is another band from that area of the world, Judas Priest.
Ah, yes.
And again, mid-'80s, getting into music. I really got into Priest with Turbo. But I then discovered that a song that I'd heard in 1980 was actually Judas Priest, so I realized that I'd liked them for a few years before that, but never found out who the band was playing on that tape deck at a summer house. So as I got into the catalog, I found that there's a buried gem on the first album. And obviously Rock-a-Rolla is an album by a band that's still looking for its own identity. It's not like that first Sabbath album, which is a complete presentation of something completely new and different. So Priest had a bit of progressive elements going through them at that time. And Run of the Mill, to this day, is just one of my favorite pieces of music. It's epic, it's proggy, it's strange, it's just absolutely beautiful as well. So as an obscure album when it comes to Priest, most people are going to start thinking British Steel or Sad Wings. If those with taste will probably think Stained Class, some Screaming for Vengeance. This whole first album has so much excellent stuff on it, represented by Run of the Mill. Is just the standout track on that, and it's also the bloody long. It's like 8.5 minutes long. So one of those real nice pieces that just keeps going with lots of intricate guitar work, great vocals by Rob.
Yeah, but again, I don't know it, which is, and I'm very keen to check it out because I do like Judas Priest, but I came in to Judas Priest around about the time of sort of British Steel and singles like United and Breaking the Law and all that sort of stuff, and I've got that lovely clear vinyl 12-inch of, what's it, Highway, not Highway Star, that's another band.
Heading Out to the Highway.
Yeah, is that right? Is that right?
Heading Out to the Highway, yeah.
I know it's got Green Nation Live on the other side. But yeah, Judas Priest, I only really know them from when they properly broke through in the sort of new wave of British heavy metal type thing. So that's definitely something I'll check out. I look forward to that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I got into them much later than that. I was aware of Turbo, wasn't too keen on it. That was around the time when I first have heard of them. But then I got right into them when Painkiller came out. I was like, wow, this is like unbelievable. And then as soon as I got hooked in with Painkiller, then my whole mission to go backwards and find everything, started. And I was just absolutely shocked when I stumbled across Sad Wings of Destiny, like later on. I was like, wow, this is like incredible. And this is like their second record. Like, it's unbelievable. Like that they had such a great amount of songs at the early part of their career. So I was really taken aback that, they had a record like Painkiller, but then they had something like Sad Wings of Destiny, like 20 years before that, So it was absolutely incredible. It was a fantastic discovery for me. I'll do one more, and then so we can go get onto David's thing. Is this artist to me is everybody's favorite artist, I think, from when it comes to England, especially if you're a musician. And I know that David has a good connection to somebody who works very closely with him or who had worked very closely with him. So I'm talking about, of course, David Bowie, right? And I know that you have a good connection with Mr. Tony Visconti.
That is
right?
me and Mr. Visconti, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know that he's done some of David's fantastic records have been done with him. And, as a musician, I've always been a big fan of David's stuff because I loved Mick Ronson. His guitar playing was always something that, I loved. And to this day, I'll put on the Ziggy Stardust live video that they have out there, the Spiders from Mars live from the I think it was the Hammersmith Odeon. I always watch that, crank it in my room. It's just unbelievable live performances. And then I know you've also performed with Holy Holy with Woody Woodmansey, right? So I mean, you know, to know somebody like you who's done that, I just feel honored to know you, that you've been involved with these people, you know. And it's incredible. Like, I mean, you're sitting beside the guy who's done Heroes, you know, like that to me is incredible, you know. So I've always thought that it's a fantastic thing, you know, that you have connection with somebody like that who, you know, you can have his ear every once in a while, I'm sure, to, you know, give you little tips and stuff like that. And this is something that me, as a guy who does my own records as well, you know, admire that you have that, you know, and that I can even talk to you about stuff like that. So David Bowie has that connection, I think, with all of us. Like, you know, he's connected us in so many ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I had my sort of you know, my time with Tony, which was basically when I was I played guitar on the Daphne Guinness album, the Golden Chord, and yeah, again, yeah, I don't get starstruck or anything, but I do remember sitting in the guitar booth waiting to do my bit with my headphones on, and you know, you hear the talkback button get pushed down, and then it's Tony's voice coming through your headphones, and you think, wow, that's the voice that told Bowie what he was doing, and Mark Bolan and Thin Lizzy, and you know, and all this sort of stuff, you know. Oh yeah, that's the booth. There you go. That was Malcolm from Daphne's band took that photograph. Yeah. And it was quite nerve-wracking, because I know one of the good things about Tony as a producer is he wants to get it right, and he doesn't suffer people who mess about. So I knew I had to get it, but I did it in one take, I'm pleased to say. And when as the last chord rang out, I could feel the sweat trickling down my armpits, you know. And then I heard the voice come through and go, you know, that was great, Dave. That was great. Do you want to come in? You know, so that was really good. But you say about the Bowie thing, I mean, I've always loved Bowie, you know. I loved the Low album. I loved Ashes to Ashes. I loved all the early Ziggy and all that sort of stuff. But he's one of these, he's so prolific that you just kind of like a bit of everything, don't you? You sort of take it on board. But when I started doing things like Holy Holy, and which obviously is Woody, but let's not forget that we had on backing vocals, we had Lisa Ronson, his daughter, and Maggie Ronson, his sister, and you know, we even had Hannah, his niece, on keyboards, and so there was like the, you know, the Ronson ladies, as we like to call them, as well as Tracy Hunter, Ian Hunter's daughter, you know. So I mean, the very first Holy Holy lineup was amazing, you know, and all these people in it, and it's great. And me, and I to this day, I don't know how I managed to end up in that, to be honest. I don't know, you know, but I saw Woody a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, and you know, he's still great, and he's a fantastic guy. So, but what it did was it made me really appreciate Bowie all over again, because when you're learning a set of his songs, you have to really get your head down and, you know, and think about them. And I was in Erdal Kizilkay's band as well, which he's the guy that co-wrote Outside, When the Wind Blows, all that sort of stuff with Bowie as well. So that was another thing of having to learn those lines. And
I think we'd be amiss, David, if you didn't tell that story that you told me about when you got that little phone call from Bowie. What did he tell you? Remember? You told me that thing, that he told you something?
Oh no, that was he. No, I can't tell that. You have to edit that. No, you'll have to edit that out. Can you do that, Julian?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. I'll tell you off air why. You know. So, okay. How can I start this with a clean edit, Julian?
Just go talk about Bowie. And if you actually, I'll jump in here. Hey, I've also got to pick on Bowie, and you know, just before we start wrapping this, The Man Who Sold the World was on mine, and you know, one of the things with Bowie was I got a greater appreciation of his music when the guys from Def Leppard did the Cybernauts project and went out to Japan and did a set. I think Woody was in the band, Trevor Bolder. Can't remember who else, obviously Phil and Joe, but it was just a whole it was more about Mick actually than Bowie, because they had Angel Number 9 in there as well. So you know, all of that that kind of music and that time, all those singles, be it Ziggy, be it, whatever. It's just so central to kind of my musical life. Again, I'm more likely to throw on a Cybernauts album, or the Cybernauts album, since there was only the one, than go and actually listen to all the Bowie stuff that I've got on my iTunes. It's just one of those weird things, maybe because it's a marriage of Def Leppard, Bowie, and honoring Mick. That makes it a little bit more meaningful to me within the context of when I became a music fan, because obviously I wasn't around listening to music in 71, 72 when David was doing all that stuff. So great music.
But I feel very lucky that obviously I get to hear the stories and all this. So I've done bits and pieces with Earl Slick as well along the years, and so there was there's quite a lot of non-Visconti stuff from that era, as you know. So yeah, I had a good wide thing. Now, do I still have one left? We were going to do.
Yeah, give us your last pick, and then we'll go into the conclusion.
It's so hard, isn't it, to check which ones do you leave out? But I wanted to try and give you guys something that you probably have never heard, because it's new, it's very new, but it's a band. I'm sure we've all been to see a band, and we've just stood there with our jaws dropped, and this is a band that have really only sort of come into my radar over the last couple of years. I think they've only been going a couple of years, and I would doubt that you could have heard from them. They're from Manchester, and they are called Witch Fever, and this is their debut single, and it's on very, very nice groovy red vinyl. Now, the reason I picked this was because it had been ages and ages and since I got really impressed by a band. And what I mean by that is because obviously I love a lot of bands, and I go and I think, wow, that band was good, or support bands that maybe support us. And this was a thing. I was playing for, again, Ed Graham, the guy that was the drummer in The Darkness. He had his new band, and I was playing bass in it. And we had this gig in London, and the support band, not even the main support, the support before the main support, was this band, Witch Fever. And I sort of wandered through, and I thought, oh well, I'll go and have a look. And it has been years since I've had the effect that they had on me. They're about, I don't know how old they are. It doesn't really matter, but I'm guessing about 19, 20, something like that, around that. And they just, I've never seen a band so in control, and so it was like four Nirvanas coming at you, sort of thing. They were so loud and 100% into what they were doing, total dedication to what they were doing. And when I spoke to them afterwards, they'd driven down from Manchester in a van to come and do this gig where they were like, first on of three bands, and the thing, I remember walking into the dressing room after watching them, and I said to the guys in my band, we are in such trouble. Because I just thought, I've just seen one of the most amazing live bands. They were just so, it's hard to say what it was about them, but they were, and musically they were brilliant. They did a cover version of something in the middle of their song, in the middle of their set, and that was the worst bit of the set. Their own tunes were amazing. And this single is called Toothless, and I just highly recommend it. And I don't know whether, I don't know how many copies they pressed. All I do know is that they've only just got their first sort of big support tour with a band in this country, So I honestly think that you'll be seeing them on the world stages soon. So that's why that was going to be my last single, so that I could just kind of propel into the future a bit. But yeah, for me personally, if you like it loud, noisy, and right in your face, definitely Witch Fever have had the biggest impact on me in terms of just watching a live band and then thinking, I immediately wanted to know if they'd recorded anything. They said, no, not yet. And as a producer, I would love to produce that band. I'd love to, because I just thought they were amazing. I can't wait till there's an album. But there you go. So yeah, the tip for the future: Witch Fever from Manchester.
Nice. So that's a whole bunch of singles, but let's talk about the Venus Reaction single, which got the cover.
Sure.
what are the plans? You spent today doing work for the repush of it.
Yeah.
How are things going to roll out now, a year down the road, to start repushing it?
Well, basically, we sneaked it out. Like I say, look, part of it was this personal reason where I just wasn't in the right mood to try and sort of promote and what have you. And but also now it's like we've Amazon have come on board. You know, you can get it through Amazon.co.uk as well as the places, the two distributors we had before and still have is burningshed.com. And which I know you bought a few things off Burning Shed, Mark.
Oh yeah.
And the merchdesk.com. So you can get through there. But what's really nice for me is that what today marks the 22nd, marks for me is it's actually going to retail, and that's what I like. It's going into independent record shops today. So I love the idea that if people want to go into their local record shop that sells vinyl and sells singles, we're now being distributed by Code 7 Plastic Head, and they will be getting them into the shops as well. So if you in America and in Canada, it's a bit different. You might as well still go for Burning Shed or the Merch Desk if you want to grab one. But I just love the fact that it's going to be in physical shops, and that's the thing, that because it's that experience. Like, it's what we've just been talking about for the last hour or whatever it is. You know, it's the single. It's that sort of thing. And also, I always promoted this single as a debut farewell single. Because it is. We won't do it. We won't do it again. I mean, Amy's got a new band together, and she'll be doing the Amy Conradine band. Glenn's just released, obviously, his Good to Go album, and he's doing all his other stuff as well. He's got his all-star band and lots of acoustic shows and all that sort of stuff. Ed's got his Puppets to the Supreme Commander, which I play on as well. So he's got his new band. But it was never meant to be a band. It was meant to be a band that isn't a band. Do you know what I mean? Just one of those weird get-togethers. And I just made sure that all the elements were good. I got Jim Lowe, who is he's done a lot of stuff for Stereophonics, Charlatans, Pink, I think was one of it, something he did as well. And so he mixed it for me, and so that's why it sounds so good. And then I got it mastered by John Davis, who did all the Led Zeppelin remasters, as well as, you know, Stereophonics stuff and Lana Del Rey and all that sort of thing. I produced it, obviously, and that's obviously a phenomenal production job. But yeah, I just wanted everything about it to be what I found exciting about singles. And on the back, it's got all the information you could possibly want about who did what, and then obviously a ton of thank yous. Everyone from my sisters and my friend Charlie, to Lol Tolhurst, Mick Wall, and all that sort of bunch. People who've helped me, people who've given me a bit of a shove. And I won't do it again. I don't think I'll ever do it again. I mean, I've got bands that I'm in, Atlantic Machine, Choose Your Weapon, and those sort of things. Those bands I'll do some more stuff with them. But I think in terms of something that's pretty much my doing and my band, if you like, I just wanted to do it and get it out there before it got too late. Really, it just felt like the right time to do it. To spend a lot of time playing with all these people who are fantastic, and I just sort of realised that I used to be in bands doing my own stuff as well. And so that was my well, it's a very rambling way round of just saying I just wanted to put out something that was mine and make it special. But that was the main thing, that was to make it special. And I know that everything I'm saying sounds like a plug, but even the download card, the lyrics are on there. There's photos. There's a biog. There's the demo, which is just me and the girl that wrote it, Chelsea Riley. That's me and her. I'm playing everything. She's singing it. It's a lo-fi, 4-track version of Crashing Up. Mm-hmm. But what I did today was basically a brand new advert for it. It's a 50-second advert that will be on YouTube, and Julian, I can send you the link if you like, if you want to.
Yeah, please
put that on. So you'll hear a 50-second burst of it. And but it's weird because I don't want to do the big sell, really. I kind of want it to just leak out to those who'll enjoy it, you know. And I think if you do like bands like the Professionals, like we were talking about, or, you know, the rockier end of post-punk or whatever, with a female vocal, you know, then somebody said it sounded...
with a fabulous female vocal. Let's not downsell the quality of her singing, because you know, I was impressed by that, and you know, let me also say I was impressed by the production. I mean, it's a really crisp, you know, great production. So, you know, the whole thing is quality.
Somebody did say they thought it sounded like the Professionals with a female vocalist, which I was really pleased about. You know, because that was you know, that I love the Professionals. You know, I love that guitar sound, Jonesy's guitar sound and stuff like that. But I think it's just I just went for the big sort of wall of guitars, and like I say, Amy is she's just one of these. I sometimes find with female singers that do rock, they sometimes try and put on a bit of a sort of voice, you know, and that sort of thing. Whereas Amy doesn't actually have to do that. She is, you know, but she just sounds like she means everything that she sings. You know what I mean? And that's what I like. That's what I like. I didn't want her to put on any sort of flavour for it. I didn't really give her any direction. You know.
You know, it's really good. I mean, I've listened to it several times, and I have a copy, obviously, of it. And I mean, even the B-side, I think, is an excellent song too. I mean, I like the whole single. I mean, it's one of those singles that I can honestly say that I'm almost sad that there's not going to be like a full length. It's one of those things where you get it like, oh, I wonder when the full length album's going to come out, you know, kind of thing. It's so good. It's done really well, you know. So I don't think that should be underplayed. It's a really, really strong single, you know. And if people, like you said, if people like that type of music and like that sort of you know, that genre of hard rock, you know, I think it's going to be right up their alley.
Absolutely, and I think the weird split is that I find that a lot of the younger people, sort of like 17 years old to sort of 22 or whatever, well, even younger than that, I suppose, but they really like Crashing Up, and maybe it's because Chelsea wrote the lyrics to that, and I know that. Yeah, Chelsea was quite badly bullied at school, and that was her. She kind of wrote that as a sort of, you know, fuck you to the people that caused that, because she obviously came through it, you know. But that was her experience, and so the younger people seem to really like that. Whereas Lifetime was entirely written by me, and it's just me whinging about getting older. Always. I mean, somebody asked me in an interview not long back. What it was, well, my answer to this thing that they were talking about was that they'd said that there was a bloke on there as well with me that said he just I won't say who it is, but they just described this terrible series of events, and at the end of it he did what a lot of people do, and they say, but do you know what, I wouldn't change a single thing, I'd do it all over again the same way. And I just thought, are you fucking mad? And it's like I think I'm an absolute volcano of regret. I change loads of stuff, you know. I have so many things, you know, and Lifetime's a bit of that. So I think, and older people really like it. You know, people in their sort of 30s, 40s, and early 50s. Those are the messages that I get through Facebook, through the Venus Reaction Facebook, where you get the older people saying, "Oh God, I really love that Lifetime song," and then you get the young kids saying, you know, "Oh, Crashing Up's great." So hopefully, even within 2 tracks, there's something for everyone.
Yeah, reaching all kinds of demographics with just 2 songs.
Yeah. But the main thing is just to try and make it special as well. I just didn't want to bung it out on iTunes and Spotify and, there's a limited single if you want it. I just thought, no, it's only on vinyl. It's, you know, you can download it yourself off the card, but in terms of purchasing it, it's not on iTunes, it's not on Spotify, and as long as I can keep the record company at bay, it won't be. Nope. You know, so.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They're good. Yeah, Chris Topham, who runs Plain Groovy, he started that record company because he loves vinyl and he loves music as well. So he's with me on this one. You know.
Well, brilliant. I hope it does well. I hope you get to see it in a store, because as Mark and I both know, even if we've taken the records in ourselves, or a book in my case, into a store, there's nothing like seeing what you've created, music or writing, in a store where other people can see it, rather than relying on the connections that you may have online to have people purchase it, go to Amazon and get it. No, it's in the store, That is brilliant.
Both of you must have experienced this, where you get a message from someone you don't know. Like, they're not a friend of yours. You've never met them. They've just sent you a thing and said, Julian, I really loved your book. Or, Mark, I really loved the Project Gemini album. And that's the thrill for me, is that somebody somewhere heard about it, maybe they saw the old clips of the recording sessions that I put up on the Venus Reaction YouTube channel, and then went from there, because obviously at the end of all of them it says where you can buy it and all that sort of stuff. But I love the fact that there's people I don't know. We're all used to our mates buying our stuff and going, "Oh, I bought your single," But when it's someone totally out of the blue that you don't, they're just saying, I love it. Or they send you a photograph of it. One guy sent me a picture of his daughter in their living room. He was playing Crashing Up really loud, and she was bouncing around on the sofa dancing, and that was really good. And it was just amazing, and all over the country, all over the world as well, Japan, Germany. So, if anyone is watching this and wants one, I'd hurry up, because I honestly don't know how long they'll last, and it won't be repressed. It won't be repressed. I want it to be, a special thing. So when it sells out, it's gone.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, David Donley, thank you very much for joining us to go through some of your top 10 UK singles.
We've got to do it again. There's too many left over. There's so many honourable mentions, but yeah.
That's the whole idea about this is, we get through as many as we can and then look at the time, because we want to make sure that people can watch the shows within a reasonable amount of time, not having, to go through 2 hours of people talking. And there's some things that you've both mentioned today that I'm going to go and check out, and I hope the same for people who've watched or listened to this show. I'll always be open-minded. I'm going to go check out that Cure song, because obviously I didn't have particularly kind things to say about the Cure when you mentioned them. But always be open-minded about music, and you may have a new discovery, and then you've got a whole new back catalogue to go and check out. So
absolutely, and I think that in the future with this podcast, if you do another thing on music, if it's the two of you or whether it's all three of us and stuff, we should you should definitely do a whole podcast of I bet you haven't heard this.
That would be fun, and
that'd be great.
Some of the things we have planned for the format on this show, not just top 10s, not just single albums or rankings or movies. It's endless the ways that we can approach looking at music, because again, there's so much music out there to appreciate, so much stuff to learn, and so many discoveries to be made. So hopefully, someone out there is going to discover Crashing Up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, let's call that there. Thank you all for listening, and we hope you'll come back for another episode. We'll see you then. Bye for now. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.